في العام 629 رسول أو مبعوث من الرسول محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم اتجه إلى الغساسنة وقتل في حادثة لم تكن معتادا أن يقتل المبعوثين والرسل، مما اضطر أن يكون هناك الرسول أن يرسل جيشا ليقاتل الغساسنة وحلفائهم الروم في معركة مؤتة. حدثني عن هذه المعركة وعن دور خالد بن الوليد فيها.
Okay, so sometime between the Battle of the Trench, which was in 527, and Mutah, which is in 529, Khalid ibn al-Walid and Amr ibn al-As go to the Prophet Muhammad and they convert to Islam. So you're right, like Mutah is going to be the first time he fights for the Muslims. They go into what is today Jordan. There is a pretty deep valley that they have to cross through to get up onto this plain near the town of Mutah, and the Romans arrive. So when we say the Romans, it's a little tricky because they're Ghassanids, and the Ghassanids were Christian Arabs who were a vassal state of the Roman Empire. So the number of Romans that were with the Ghassanids was probably around 3,000 is my guess. And then the Ghassanids might have been 47,000. So we're talking about an army probably about 50,000. There are numbers that are much larger than that, but I tend to always go with the more conservative estimates. The Muslims brought 3,000 men. So 3,000 against 50,000 is not probably doable. The fighting begins, and you think, when you see the 50,000, you run away. You don't stay for the fight. But the Muslim army stayed for the fight. There were 3 people that were designated as commanders by the Prophet Muhammad. And one after the other, they die. And at that point, then the army literally doesn't have anybody in charge. There's a moment of chaos. Eventually, there's a person who...
يعني كان القائد الأول زيد بن حارثة، ثم جعفر بن أبي طالب، ثم عبد الله بن رواحة، وكلهم قتلوا. وكانت هذه التوصية بالتسمية من الرسول مباشرة. قتل عبد الله بن رواحة فلم يكن للمسلمين قائد. أكمل لي القصة.
Yeah, so they have nobody in charge, and there is a person who takes the flag, the banner for the army, and goes to Khalid and says, "You should be in charge." And I think in large measure it's because of his performance at Uhud. He takes command of the army, and his goal at this point is, there's no winning. His goal is to get the men out, which when you think about it is a really remarkable thing to want to even try to do because he's so badly outnumbered. So they go into this valley and they set up camp across from the Romans for the night. And what Khalid tells his men to do is instead of having one fire for every 5 or 10 men, each man makes his own fire. And then periodically the men would get up and they would walk around the fire. So it looked like there were a lot of people there. And it made the numbers look much bigger. So the Romans went, maybe we underestimated the number of men here. And so that's Khalid's tactic. He's trying to confuse the Romans on the
هل اعتقد الرومان انهم اكثر او انه اجاهم مدد، يعني مدد من الخارج؟
They were surprised that there were so many people there, and I think that's what the horse scene was with the torches. So then the next day in the morning, what Khalid does is he takes the banners from all the units, and he has the cavalry go down into a valley behind a hill so the Romans can't see. And he has them take one of the banners and they go around a hill and then they come up on top of the hill and then they go down again. And when they go down, most of the riders go back into the valley. But one guy goes up on top with the banner, or maybe a few guys go up on top with the banner. Then the cavalry that had just gone up over the hill takes another banner, they go up over the hill so the Romans can see them, they drop down in the valley, most of them go back around, but a few go up on top with the new banner, they grab a new banner and then they go back around, and they keep doing this. So instead of it looking like there's 500 cavalry arriving, it looks like there's 5,000 cavalry arriving. So the Romans are beginning to think, oh, they're getting all these reinforcements, they had so many more men than we thought, so it's causing the Romans to hesitate. That night he does the campfire trick again, and then they run. They just abandon the fires and they take off into the desert. And by this point, the Romans are convinced the whole thing is a trap. and that if they pursue, they'll be ambushed, so they don't pursue, and that's how he escapes.
يعني خالد بن الوليد قرر أنه يعني يحمي الجيش وينقذ الجيش وينسحب بدون خسائر. هذا الهدف اللي كان يريد الوصول إليه خالد.
I mean, I'm sure they had losses in the beginning, but yeah, under Khalid's command, they escaped them, which is amazing. Like, so it's technically not a victory, right? Because he didn't win the ground, but I think you can also count it as not a defeat, because they should have been wiped out.
والخدعة والإلهاء كانت هي التكتيك العسكري اللي اتبعها خالد هنا.
Yeah, in this case, the tactics are, how do I confuse the army on the other side just enough that they decide we shouldn't pursue. And so in that case, it's like psychological warfare.